Hello everyone, how's it going? In this video I wanted to go ahead and show you how to make this exact scene using Blender. Now we are going to be focusing on showing you a extremely bulletproof and quick workflow which will allow you to make scenes for your portfolio or for clients in a very short duration of time. Now as always, we are using Blender and linking down all of the necessary assets. And if you like this, stay tuned and follow along. We are going to be starting using a model which comes from the SketchUp 3D warehouse. I will be linking it down in the description as well, so check that out if you want to follow. Download it as a Collada file or as a SketchUp file and import it. Alternatively, if it doesn't work for you, you can import it into 3ds Max and export it again as an FBX. That tends to work a lot better than using the SketchUp importer add-on. When the model comes in, it does have a couple of issues, mainly being unorganized. So what you want to do is select all of the objects in your scene, press tab and go to edit mode, select everything and press P, separate by materials. After doing that, I want you to go ahead and select the main objects with the main materials and press Shift L. What that will do is allow you to select objects which are linked by material, effectively selecting all of the objects with the same material and pressing Ctrl J to merge them. This will help you to apply materials and make the scene have less objects and easier to navigate. In my case, I'm using a Viz People pack, which is concrete textures, and it does contain, its name, concrete. So alternatively, you can go ahead and download something off of the internet for free, be it for example from CG Bookcase or textures.com or Polyhaven or Quixel Bridge. After doing that, apply the regular PBR workflow using a albedo map, a glass map, and a normal map. You can spend a lot of time in this process, adding dirt, adding worn out edges, adding some reflectivity variation, and smudges, etc. Maybe even adding leaks, perhaps, or painting over the actual texture. But in my case, we're probably not going to dive into that since it will be turning the video into an extremely long video with a lot to digest. After doing that, we are going to apply a blank material to our objects which contain a blank texture. And for the asphalt road, we are going to be using a texture from Quixel Bridge. You can go ahead and import it into Blender and fix it using the regular PBR workflow. CG Bookcase also has some really amazing asphalt textures, and I highly recommend that you go ahead and use them. In my case, I found them to be slightly better looking than Megascan ones. Make sure to adjust the UVs, since the UVs did look wrong when importing it at first. At this point, we are going to be adding our camera. Rotate on the x-axis by 90 degrees and position it where you want it to be. Drop it down to the floor level and set the focal length to 28 or 24 or 35. Usually a wider lens will typically give some nice distortions and more depth to the scene, but you can experiment with different focal length and lenses. I like to usually go ahead and use a height of around 1.7 meters. And instead of rotating the camera on the x-axis again, I'm just using the Shift Y function, which will remove any distorted verticals. We are using cycles, and if you have a GPU, make sure to be using that using the RTX if it does support RTX. And for our placeholder lighting, we are going to be using a sky texture. In this case, I'm going to be using an HDRI with some slight workaround using a very nice add-on, which I'm going to be showing you in a minute. But the sky texture is a really nice, clean vessel to work with. I'm just up in the altitude and up in the ozone layer to get a nicer bluish tint. At this point, we need to start adding some environment elements. And, based on my earlier videos, I'm quite sure that you already know that I really like vegetation in general. Not only because it's accessible using certain add-ons like Bagapie or like the Botaniq add-on, which is what I'm currently using, but it does add a lot of nice green. And if you haven't noticed as well, the videos that have green and blue tend to perform the best based on my analytics. So I take it that you guys like it. And I definitely agree. I do like the color scheme as well. I'm also adding a type of winter tree in order to help with the contrast of the image. Remove the snow so it doesn't blend so much with the actual sky. And it wouldn't make sense to have a summer scene with green leaves and for some reason a tree is just naked. At this point, just scatter around your trees, populate the scene. Ideally, I would have added also houses around the scene. Maybe also duplicate the same exact house a couple of times, or use a house from the Blender Kit add-on, or just use a scan, or literally just a cube with some textures on it and a couple of windows on it. That would improve the context of the scene so much more, and I did that in the past, so you can look through my videos to find that. Now just populating the scene with a lot of greens. They generally look really nice, although not as realistic as, for example, adding a real context using actual houses and trees and road systems. But in this case, I wanted to mostly make an extremely quick video and show you how far you can get by being sloppy. In addition, I would highly recommend that you add a plane with a greenish dark color to emulate the actual grass that these trees would be sitting on. In this case, I really didn't just bother adding that. What this will do is allow the lighting to not bounce off of the ground, but at the same time not to be as harsh as in our case. Now, as you could see, I am adding a tree in a place which it shouldn't be. And I'm going to the object properties and to the visibility and ray visibility and disabling everything except shadows, which makes this object only cast shadows, since I didn't really like the blown out look of the actual house model. You can use a gobo for that, or you can add an alpha plane and just hide that for the camera ray visibility. But in this case, I just used the same exact tree. I'm also scattering some grass. The process is extremely repetitive, and I did share this process for, I think, over a dozen videos. But it's always nice to rehearse everything. Just duplicating the actual assets over and over again, using Alt-D in order to improve memory optimization, and adding some more tropical plants as well. It does really help with the mood as well. As you can see, I made this scene without any prior preparations, mostly due to the lack of time on my part and getting lazy and delaying the video. So yeah, that's on me. Now, regardless, just add some assets. You can probably do a way better job than this if you happen to spend some more time. And oftentimes I get people asking, why do your actual scenes on Instagram look 10 times better than your YouTube tutorials. Now, my explanation to that would be, when making my own scene, I typically go ahead and spend a lot of time. But for YouTube videos, I typically try to make the duration of the video anywhere from 8 minutes to 25 minutes. So 50 minutes is the duration. You can't really do all that much in it, but you can make a nice scene if you know what you're doing, and this is what I'm showing you right now. So I'm using an add-on called Easy HDRI. It allows you to manage all of your HDRIs in a single place and switch between them very easily. It also creates a nice and crafty node setup, which helps you adjust your actual hue, your saturation, also I think your gamma, and the rotation, as well as the actual sun strength, using some nice math node setup, which is what I'm doing here. I'm playing with a couple of HDRIs. I want directional daylight, which is what this scene is giving me. As you can see, I'm upping the strength of the sun a slight bit. It does help give us that extremely harsh and directional lighting. So as you could see, I'm just playing with the strength again. Playing around with the values, seeing what looks good and what doesn't look good. This process, if you would spend more time on it, I'm quite sure it will look a lot nicer. Try a couple of HDRIs, maybe add some specific lights, maybe add some lights that only affect a certain aspect of the scene, for instance, or use the light leaking feature in Blender 4.2, I think. That's an extremely useful feature that I would have been waiting for a long, long time. So as you could see, I'm just revisiting all of the vegetation that I added, deleting the ones that don't look as good. Don't be afraid to just ditch ideas. It's totally okay. Don't be too attached to a certain asset that you made, that once you add it to a scene, it doesn't look all that good. Even if you spend days making it, do not attempt to force it, and it will look forced. I can assure you that. Keep it for later use. You wouldn't really lose it if you kept a good track of it, and you can use it for better context later on, but don't force anything. This add-on also comes with a nice option for adding a specific background using the in-camera ray node slot. As you can see, you can use a solid color, which you can sample from your own HDRI and push the saturation and value as well. You can do that. Or you can use a different HDRI as well, which will only be shown to the camera, but it won't actually affect the actual scene. It's as if you imported the PNG rendered image of this project, also added the alpha map to be as a mask, and imported an image and put it under the layer of our actual render. Practically the same thing here. It doesn't affect the lighting, it doesn't affect anything, just it's visible to the camera, as you can see here in front of you. So I am going to be plugging in the same HDRI that we used for our lighting, but I am going to be upping the saturation and value, if I'm not mistaken. You can also play with the gamma, or you can just take this to Photoshop, maybe paint in some nice clouds using some nice brushes, maybe use a cloudy HDRI. But in this case, it seemed okay to use just the regular one that I used for the lighting in order to get a nice, deep, clear sky. Now, I will be adding a hue saturation node in between and upping the saturation substantially. I know it doesn't look as natural, and you can probably fiddle with that, but for a thumbnail, this looks way nicer, which is what I'm rendering the scene for, to be a thumbnail. But you can play with this, you can do your own iteration, you can make your own lighting. A lot of people send me their scenes on Instagram, and a lot of them do a really, really good job of having their own twist. Some of them I share on my story. If you happen to follow along one of my videos, please send them over to my stories. I watch every single one of them and answer everyone there. And sometimes people tag me, so you can go ahead and navigate to my Instagram account and take a look at my tagged posts where people tag me on scenes that they made using my tutorials, or scenes that I made on behalf of certain businesses. You can also share them on our Discord server if you want certain feedback from me or other people in the server. I also played with the temperature to add some certain warmth to the image, since I wasn't really liking the extremely bluish tint with the directional white lighting. Now, in around 20 minutes, we have made a really nice scene from scratch using a simple model from the SketchUp warehouse, which without optimization wouldn't have worked. For 20 minutes, I'm liking the result, but it can look way better for the work of 1 hour. Now, if you found this video useful, subscribe, drop me a comment with your questions or just opinions, and suggest for me the next video idea that you would want to see. So until next time, take care and enjoy yourself.